Playboy covers made them household names, but years later, these stars confessed they wished it never happened. Why did celebrities who posed at the peak of their fame later wish they'd never stepped in front of that camera? Today, we're breaking down 7 famous stars who opened up about their Playboy shoots and the surprising reasons they regretted it. Pamela Anderson. Pamela Anderson became one of Playboy's most visible cover girls and a face of 1990s Playboy. Everyone remembers her as that blonde bombshell from Baywatch, running in slow motion down the beach. But here's what nobody talks about. Anderson's Playboy work began around 1989 and launched her to global stardom. But it came with a price she didn't expect. Picture this: a small-town Canadian girl working as a fitness instructor gets spotted at a football game on the big screen. One thing leads to another and boom, she's offered a Playboy shoot. See, Pamela thought posing would give her control over her image, make her famous on her own terms. She figured if she was going to be looked at anyway, might as well get paid for it and call the shots. The magazine made her a household name, all right. Those covers sold millions of copies worldwide. Her face was everywhere: newsstands, college dorm rooms, barbershops. The Playboy work opened doors to acting opportunities, but it also became what she later described as a double-edged sword that exposed her to intense scrutiny. Years later, she'd sit in interviews talking about how it shaped every relationship, every role, every single day of her life. Men approached her differently. Women judged her harshly. Even her own children had to deal with their mom's naked photos being just a Google search away. She later said the photos made it hard on her sons at school. They faced teasing and bullying because of her racy photographs. The dating scene? Forget about it. Every guy she met already had this image of who she was supposed to be. They expected the fantasy, not the real woman who liked quiet nights at home reading books. Her marriages fell apart partly because of the pressure, the constant attention, the way her past followed her everywhere like a shadow she couldn't shake. When she tried to do serious dramatic work, producers would laugh. Why would they want acting when they could get the Playboy girl to just look pretty and say a few lines? The real kicker? She admitted the shoots made her feel powerful at first, then completely powerless for decades. That rush of being desired, being famous, being wanted, it faded fast. What stuck around was everyone else's opinion about what those photos meant. She became public property. Like her body and her choices weren't her own anymore. The worst part was watching how it affected her kids. They couldn't escape it either. Their friends at school would find the photos, make jokes, ask uncomfortable questions. Her personal life became everyone's business because of decisions she made when she was barely old enough to understand the consequences. In her memoir and interviews, she later reflected on feeling exploited and how the images affected her family. She spent 3 decades trying to prove she was more than those photos, more than that fantasy. But Pamela's story isn't the only one about making choices too young to understand what they really meant. Drew Barrymore. Drew Barrymore was 19 when she posed for Playboy in 1995, and she had her reasons. This wasn't some random decision made on a whim. The girl had been through a tumultuous childhood by the time most people graduate high school. This was right after she'd been trying to shed her child star image from E.T. Picture this: she spent her whole life being America's sweetheart, that adorable little girl who helped an alien phone home. But by her teens, she was ready to break free from that cute kid image that felt like a prison. She was rebelling against everything. Her family, Hollywood, her whole squeaky clean past. Her mother had put her to work as a baby, managing every aspect of her life. Studio executives treated her like property. Everyone had an opinion about who Drew should be, how she should act, what roles she should take. The Playboy shoot felt like her middle finger to all of that control. See, here's the thing. The shoot felt like freedom to her, like she was finally taking control of her own story. For the first time in her life, she was making a choice about her body, her image, her career without anyone else calling the shots. She thought she was being brave, authentic, real in a world full of fake Hollywood personas. The shoot was marketed as chaste, more artistic than overtly sexual. She walked into that studio feeling powerful. This was her declaring independence from the child star label that followed her everywhere. No more innocent little Drew. This was grown-up Drew making grown-up decisions about her own life and body. But here's the thing. 19 feels old when you're 19, but looking back, she realized she was still just a kid trying to prove she was an adult. The rebellion felt necessary at the time, but she hadn't thought through what it would mean for the rest of her life. She later said she never imagined the internet would make the images so permanent. Years later, when she became a mom, she looked back at those photos with completely different eyes. Suddenly, she understood what it meant to protect someone, to want to keep parts of yourself private and sacred. The pictures that once felt empowering now felt exposing in a way that made her uncomfortable. The regret hit home in ways she never expected. Get this, her own daughter once threw the Playboy cover in her face during an argument. Talk about your past coming back to haunt you. That moment made Drew realize how her choices as a 19-year-old would follow her family forever. She started talking about it in interviews, how she wished she'd kept some mystery, some parts of herself private. The photos became this permanent record of a time when she was angry and trying to prove something to the world. But what she really needed was healing, not more exposure. She later said she regretted exposing that part of herself at 19, once she became a parent and understood permanence online. The regret wasn't about her body or sexuality. It was about timing and the pressure she felt to make adult decisions when she was still figuring out who she was. But Drew wasn't the only one who felt the weight of expectations pushing her towards choices she'd later question. Kim Kardashian. Kim Kardashian's 2007 Playboy cover hit newsstands just as Keeping Up with the Kardashians was taking off. That December issue came out right when her reality show started, and suddenly Kim was everywhere. Magazine covers, red carpets, talk shows. Everyone was talking about this new reality TV family, and there she was, naked and confident on Playboy's cover. Back then, Kim was all smiles about it, calling it empowering, saying it was her choice. She did interview after interview talking about how proud she was of her body, how the shoot made her feel beautiful and powerful. The girl seemed to glow when she talked about it. She'd flash that famous smile and tell reporters how amazing the whole experience was. She posed pregnant later, seemed proud of her body, her sexuality, her whole brand. The message was clear. Kim Kardashian wasn't ashamed of anything. She owned her curves, her sexuality, her image. When she got pregnant with North, she did another nude shoot. Everything about her public persona screamed confidence and control. But listen to what she said years later. The truth was way different from what we saw. Behind all those smiles and empowering interviews was a completely different story. Kardashian later said she felt uncomfortable and pressured into the shoot by people around her, including her mother. See, Kim admitted she felt pushed by people around her who said it would boost her career. Her team, her family, the whole machine that was building around her, everyone had opinions about what she should do. The Keeping Up with the Kardashians footage shows Jenner and Hefner discussing the shoot, context that makes sense when she later said she'd been persuaded. They painted it as a smart business move, a way to get attention and build her brand fast. She was 27, but brand new to this level of attention. The reality show was just starting. The paparazzi were following her everywhere. Everyone had advice about how to handle fame, and most of that advice involved getting more attention any way possible. The managers, publicists, and advisors all spoke the same language. Exposure equals success. They made it sound like turning down Playboy would be career suicide. Like she'd be stupid not to take advantage of the opportunity while she was hot. Kim later told Harper's Bazaar, "I'm sorry I did Playboy. I was uncomfortable." That's a far cry from the confident woman we saw in those early interviews. She was still figuring out who she was in this new famous life. The pressure to seem fearless, to seem in control, to seem like nothing bothered her, that was overwhelming. In a 2021 reunion show, she looked back at the whole thing and said simply, "Regret. I'm over it." Years of building her empire, becoming a mother, learning to control her own narrative. All of that gave her perspective on what that early shoot really cost her. The photos that were supposed to launch her career became something she had to overcome instead of celebrate. But Kim eventually learned to take control of her image and brand. Not everyone who posed for Playboy had that same luxury of reinvention. Kendra Wilkinson. Kendra Wilkinson lived at the Playboy mansion from 2004 to 2009. She was one of Hugh Hefner's girlfriends on Girls Next Door and seemed to love every minute. Picture this young girl from San Diego, barely 20 years old, getting invited to live in the most famous house in America. The cameras were rolling. Millions of people watched her living what looked like a fairy tale. Fancy cars, designer clothes, parties every night, running around the mansion with those tiny outfits and hanging out by the pool. She was America's sweetheart on that show. This bubbly blonde who was always laughing, always having fun. Viewers ate it up. Here was this regular girl living every guy's fantasy and every girl's dream of being pampered and famous. When she posed for Playboy, she glowed on camera talking about how amazing it felt. Everyone thought she was the poster girl for loving the Playboy lifestyle. Young, fun, carefree. It looked like paradise, but later she said the association created stereotypes and missed opportunities. The judgment started the minute she stepped outside that mansion. Once the show ended and she tried to build a real life, everything changed. People who met her already had their minds made up about who she was. They saw the blonde hair, the reality TV background, the Playboy photos, and that was it. When she tried to build a career after Playboy, every door she knocked on had the same response. She wanted to get into real estate, something she was actually passionate about. But the opportunities just weren't there. She later regretted prioritizing her Playboy association over other career paths, realizing those choices had long-term consequences that limited what she could do professionally. The photos that were supposed to make her famous became the reason people couldn't see past her body. Every conversation, every opportunity, every relationship got filtered through those images. She wasn't Kendra the business owner or Kendra the mom. She was just the Playboy girl trying to pretend she was something else. The mental health struggles hit hard. She openly discussed needing professional help to deal with the weight of constantly being judged, constantly having to prove herself worthy of basic respect. She credited professional support and personal growth for her recovery from what turned into years of fighting stereotypes that followed her everywhere. Kendra finally admitted that posing for Playboy created stereotypes that followed her everywhere, making her feel trapped by her own image. What started as fun and games at the mansion turned into a burden she couldn't shake. But at least Kendra made the choice to pose, even if she didn't understand the consequences. Some women didn't even get that luxury of choosing. Vanna White. Vanna White's story shows how financial desperation can lead to choices that haunt you for decades. She posed for a lingerie shoot in 1982 when she was struggling to pay rent as an unknown actress in Hollywood. Just another blonde trying to make it, waiting tables between auditions, needing money for basic survival. The photographer made it sound like any other modeling job. Some pretty pictures in underwear, nothing too revealing. Think catalog work, not centerfold material. She signed the paperwork, did the shoot, got her check, and moved on with her life. Why wouldn't she? It was just another gig to keep the lights on. But here's where it gets brutal. 5 years later, she was America's sweetheart on Wheel of Fortune, spinning letters and smiling for families across the country every single night. Millions of people know her face, her wholesome charm. She's built her entire career on being family-friendly, the perfect game show hostess that kids and grandparents both love. After she became famous on Wheel of Fortune, the images surfaced in Playboy in 1987, and she later called the decision a mistake. One day she's the nice girl next door. The next day, she's on magazine covers at gas stations and convenience stores. The timing couldn't have been worse, right when her wholesome career was taking off. The worst part? People assumed she'd chosen to pose for Playboy after becoming famous. They thought she'd gotten greedy, sold out her image for money and attention. Nobody knew the real story, that she'd posed years earlier out of desperation, not choice. She was judged for a decision she'd made when she was broke and unknown. I'm talking about a woman who built her career on being wholesome, family-friendly, everything pure about American television. Every night, families gathered around their TVs to watch Wheel of Fortune. Her whole brand was built on trust and innocence. Suddenly, there she was in a men's magazine, and she had zero control over the timing or context. Vanna called it the biggest mistake of her career, even though the real mistake was signing those papers when she was desperate for grocery money. The photos that were supposed to help her survive as a struggling actress became the thing that threatened to destroy her reputation as a successful TV personality. She spent years trying to rebuild that wholesome image, proving she was more than those old photos. But the damage was done. Every interview, every appearance, every time someone Googled her name. Those pictures were part of her story whether she wanted them to be or not. At least Vanna's photos came from financial necessity, a young woman trying to survive in Hollywood. But some celebrities made the choice to pose when they were already established, thinking it would help their careers. Sometimes that backfired even worse. Shannon Doherty. Shannon Doherty already had a bad girl reputation amplified by media coverage when she posed for Playboy in the early 1990s. Picture this, she's barely in her 20s, but the tabloids are painting her as Hollywood's biggest nightmare. Every gossip columnist had a story about her attitude, her fights with co-stars, her wild partying. The girl couldn't sneeze without someone writing an article about how difficult she was. She was a teen star on Beverly Hills 90210, but rumors were flying about her attitude, her behavior on set. Stories leaked about her showing up late, fighting with producers, clashing with other actors. Whether all of it was true or not didn't matter. Perception became reality in Hollywood. Aaron Spelling's hit show had made her famous, but it also made her a target. Every entertainment reporter was looking for the next Shannon Doherty drama story. She couldn't go to a restaurant without someone watching to see if she'd cause a scene. The pressure was crushing, and she was just a kid trying to figure out how to handle all this attention. The Playboy shoot seemed like a way to take control, show she wasn't ashamed of who she was. Think about it from her perspective. Everyone's calling you difficult, painting you as this horrible person. Why not own it? Why not show them you're confident, fearless, unashamed? The photo shoot felt like her chance to flip the script and control her own narrative. But listen, instead of helping her image, it made everything 10 times worse. The photos hit newsstands right when she needed Hollywood to see her differently. Instead of proving she was confident and in control, it just gave her critics more ammunition. Now they could point to the photos as proof of everything they'd been saying about her. Now she wasn't just the difficult actress, she was the difficult actress who posed naked. The combination was deadly for her career. Casting directors already had concerns about working with her because of the reputation. Add the Playboy photos into the mix, and suddenly she became unhireable for serious dramatic roles. The photos became an additional piece of evidence for tabloids and industry decision-makers who already questioned her temperament. Directors would meet with her, and you could see their minds were already made up. She wasn't an actress anymore. She was a tabloid story with acting experience. I'm talking about a talented woman who watched her acting career get buried under her Playboy reputation. She could act. Anyone who watched her work knew that. But talent doesn't matter when your reputation precedes you into every room. The photos became this permanent scarlet letter that followed her everywhere. She spent years trying to prove she was more than just her mistakes, more than her image. Every project became about rehabilitation instead of just doing good work. She had to work twice as hard to get half the respect other actresses got automatically. Doherty later said she regretted the pictorial and that it reinforced a negative public image. Instead of reclaiming her story, it became another chapter in the same narrative that was already hurting her career. These women all learned the same hard lesson about choices that seemed empowering in the moment, but carried consequences for decades. From Pamela's decades-long struggle with typecasting to Shannon's reinforced bad girl reputation, every single one paid a price they never saw coming. These weren't just photo shoots, they were decisions that shaped entire lives and careers. If you liked this video, make sure to watch our other videos about beautiful ladies of yesteryear in our channel.